All things unexplained.
All right, this is Dr. Mouse with All Things Unexplained. I am happy to have Christopher Eberhart with me from the U.S. Sun. Christopher, thanks for joining me for a brief chat today.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Great. So you wrote an article recently, June 28, 2022. It was titled War of the Worlds. Air Force regularly fires at UFOs in war zones. Service member reveals after military's 11 near misses bombshell. How did this kind of come about for you, this article?
Well, we've been looking into this ever since, I'm sure you've heard of Jeremy Corbell. He was the only civilian named in the congressional hearing. And
Yes.
he and I have been going back and forth and talking about this, especially after Bray testified that they don't fire upon them, they don't make any sort of, they don't reach out to them. And Corbell was just texting me, he goes, "That's not true." Uh, so we've been digging and digging. Finally, we got a service member from the Air Force, active duty, with knowledge of these incidents, and he told me outright, yes, the U.S. Air Force has fired at calls them UAPs, but UFOs.
Right. And I'm speaking with Christopher Eberhart from the U.S. Sun, and we respect that this is sensitive information, and you may have to kind of plead the fifth on some questions, but I did, for our listeners, want to run over some questions with you, and hopefully we can have you back on the show in the near future to go over some of your other work and this subject matter. Do you know, as far as you could tell, have we ever shot down a UAP?
That I don't know. We didn't talk about that, so I can't answer that for sure.
Right. Did they give any inclination about what type of weapon systems or missiles that we might have deployed on UAPs?
No, like so. And again, I apologize for this, but some of the stuff either we didn't talk about or the service members can't talk about, just very highly restricted service, highly sensitive information. So I apologize for some of the no's here.
No, that's quite all right. You know, as you mentioned that in the recent UFO congressional hearing, they really kind of, it seemed like, tried to lay the blame for a lot of these encounters on drones and
Right.
drone technology. And of course, they saved a lot for closed session, but even then, they insinuated this is drone technology. But recently, NASA has announced they're going to start studying UAPs. You know, does that make sense that NASA would begin a study of UFOs, but
No,
it's
not to
drones?
me. NASA's not putting, what was it, $100,000 and almost a whole year into this kind of a project. If they didn't see it as something, Congress is not going to have congressional hearings, sign bills that they don't think that this is serious. This is something to be looking into. And just to touch on the drone topic, maybe it is a drone. Maybe by a literal definition, it's an unmanned. Who knows? We don't know. But it's just an interesting that they use that word. But meanwhile, actions speak louder than words. I think in this case, when NASA's involved, when Congress is involved.
Right. And you know, I have seen that service members report that there is a lack of ability to, when they report these encounters, to file them appropriately. And they end up having drone, for example, as the only option for them to mark as what their encounter was.
Right. There's no classification in terms of. Sorry about that. There's no classification, and then it's also just put it down as a drone or something like that. And so that's another interesting. Will there be new classifications? There's a Senate bill that just passed one of the committees that specifically will allow. Let me read this real quick. It's going to allow increase in transparency and promote efforts to reform declassification process. And it's also going to enhance oversight and collection on reporting on UAPs. So hopefully this will give maybe whistleblowers a chance to come forward without some sort of repercussions, or give them some impunity and some protections, and we'll get more information, and we'll get more stories. And once you get more stories, you'll start seeing stories that corroborate each other.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. And when you were speaking with your sources, did you get a sense or did they have the chance to reveal what are reasons that we have fired on UAPs?
No, unfortunately, just can't answer that one. I'm sorry.
Right. And I understand. And so you probably
Um,
didn't get a sense for if the UAPs had any particular reaction to being fired on.
no, I didn't. But one, if we could just go back, not in this particular instance, because again, I can't. He didn't talk about the case. I couldn't talk about the case anyway. But the one that was shown during the congressional hearing, the one in 2019 off of California,
Yes.
you can kind of see how that can kind of show some of the capabilities where it seems to vanish into the water. Uh, those kind of capabilities, I think, are interesting, and maybe that's what kind of spooks. Again, this is just my own theories that spooks some of either the Air Force or any sort of military branch. And I don't know if any other military branches have had involvement. We've heard anecdotes, we've read stories where the Navy might be involved, especially since you know in that one particular instance. But this particular service member is from the Air Force, so that's all I can speak on.
Right. And at All Things Unexplained, we've been wondering for a while now that everything we've been seeing with the congressional hearing and the admission of the Corbell videos, they've all involved the Navy, right? And here we have the
Right.
Navy admitting these things. My goodness, what might the Air Force have to reveal?
Yeah, and I think that's the important part is that this is somebody that's active duty that's from a different branch than we've heard from before. And I think this is how, unfortunately, it's going to be slow. We're going to get drips and drabs of information coming out, and who knows, maybe we get somebody that's seen something on a boat, or But I think we're just going to get small pieces until they feel like they can be protected in order to speak up.
Right. And I want to reiterate, and by the way, this is Dr. Mounts with All Things Unexplained, speaking with Christopher Eberhart from the U.S. Sun with an exclusive on UFO story from Air Force personnel. And I want to reiterate something we had sources tell us, Navy sources tell us, for those who did not catch it on a previous episode, but we had Navy sources tell us, and quite reluctantly, they were very timid about even speaking of this, that every time we encountered UAPs, and it was a lot, our electronic systems went completely offline, and it was their job to help get us back online. That we were terrified that we're being hacked. There's nothing we can do about it. That they could assume control of our systems, and there's nothing we can do about it. And he even revealed that there have been fatalities in some of these UAP encounters.
And that in itself is fascinating. I mean, we can talk about the famous case in I think what was it 47 where the nukes appears to that nuclear site appears to go on and off. There's a Harvard professor, Avi Loeb, that was theorizing that can the UAPs or any of this technology impact AI systems. So there's a lot of theories right now, and then I think that's leading to a lot of this search, this research now, and the more like NASA's involved, Congress is involved, the more that you're seeing this legitimize people's what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and I think more people will start coming forward, and hopefully we'll get more reporting on this, and this could be the destigmatization of this whole phenomenon.
Right. Now, you mentioned in your article, War of the Worlds, in the U.S. Sun, that Russia has also fired on UAPs. Are you aware of any other countries that we know of besides Russia that have had these hostile encounters?
No. Speaking with Jeremy Corbell, he and I have been in pretty constant contact over the last few months, and he's got a lot of documentation. Unfortunately, he can't say where or what, but He specifically mentioned Russia. He didn't specifically say other countries, but what was interesting, I think, too, is that Russia and the U.S. fired upon possibly, again, it's possibly the same UAP. So it's showing that it's not us, it's not an enemy craft. We don't know what it is, and apparently multiple countries are perceiving the same thing as a threat.
Right. And this is Dr. Mouse. I'm speaking with Christopher Eberhart from the U.S. Sun. And of course, like you said, the implication from us and other countries firing on UAPs is that, okay, this must not be their technology. This must not be Russian technology, for example, if they are firing on it, because that does not make any sense, of course.
Right, and the capabilities that it's showing, it's going so the way that how fast it can move, the maneuvers that it can do, the fact that it can appear to go into the water, it can traverse air, space, water without any sort of like a sonic boom splash. Again, this is what it appears like in some of the videos that we've caught, and I think those capabilities are fascinating.
Right. And that's one thing I wanted to ask you about, Chris. This seems like a contradiction to me, and this was not brought up in the UFO congressional hearing. We have military personnel who tell us that these craft are defying the laws of physics. Now, let's think about that for a second. They're defying the laws of physics. And then we have, you know, brass at the UFO congressional hearing telling us that, or insinuating this is drone technology. But based on what the talks you've had, doesn't defying the law of physics automatically rule out drone technology?
Uh, uh, Maybe in the typical sense of drone, like when you're thinking of a drone, yeah, it can't do these kind of maneuvers. It can't hover in the air at 21,000 feet for 4+ hours. It just can't do it. Most of the drones that we know of. So again, what is the military's definition of drone? And I just think that they didn't answer a lot of the questions that were asked, or they would say, oh, we'll discuss that, behind closed doors. And I want to know what was discussed behind closed doors.
Right. I feel like they're actually doing an age old trick. They're starting to flood us with this new jargon, right? UFO is not UFO anymore. It's UAP, right? And maybe UAP is the next thing you know that is going to be synonymous with drone. And I'm afraid that that's what's slowly starting to happen here too. Can you tell us, and I know this is doubtful, but I need to ask this just to get it in out there. You mentioned in your article that we have fired on UAPs in war zones. Can you tell us any areas, specific geographic regions that we have had these hostile encounters?
I can't say specifically where, but I can say that it was an active war zone.
Right. Thank you.
So that's as far as I can go. I'm sorry.
No, I understand. And that's another thing, talking about jargon, in the UFO congressional hearing. I wondered if you had noticed this type of doublespeak that they were doing. For example, do we have a craft in our possession? If we recovered crashed UFOs and they said, no, we here in our department do not have any craft. Well, that doesn't mean the Army doesn't, right?
Right. And I think that point is interesting. And again, this is just me thinking out loud. I don't know if they do. I don't think they would ever tell us if they did. But what would be interesting is if we did, or if another country did have some of this, can they reverse engineer it and pull some of this technology that we can use on our own craft? Can this be almost like a secret arms race? I don't know. It's just me thinking out loud that this is, the stuff they can do, and if somebody got a hold of it and can reverse engineer it and can use it, fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. And do you know, like, I've always been led to believe, based on our own military experts and knowledge I've accumulated, that, let's say, you, Chris Eberhart, were flying an airplane over restricted airspace, let's say Area 51, and you refused to communicate with the military there, it's always been my understanding that, okay, you can be shot down. Do you know if there have been, or if our pilots or military personnel on submarines, on aircraft carriers, etc., do they have any protocols that you know of for engaging UAPs?
Not that I know of. I don't know that. Yes or no. I don't know. But remember, according to the congressional hearing, they don't communicate with them. Of course they don't, right?
Right,
Same way that they don't fire upon them.
exactly. But yet, that's that double speak that could mean anything, right? Like it could still
Right.
be true if we have fired on them. Well, that could still be true based on the way they have phrased their statements. So it was so interesting to me in your article in the U.S. Sun, an exclusive from Christopher Eberhart, breaking UFO news that we've been firing on UAPs possibly for quite a while now. That other countries are involved in this, and our military expert and us and other guests of the show have been wondering this for quite a while now. Could we have, it's not unusual for the military to put tests into place in real world situations, but to put up a red light, for example, before any sort of hostile situations happen. Well, let's say anybody gets hurt, for example. Could could we be seeing such, in your opinion, such a covert operation that even our own branches of the military are completely in the dark to the point they're attempting to engage in that with them?
I don't even. That's a good question, and I really don't want to speculate because I don't know and I don't have anything to base my speculation off of at this point. I'm just trying to go off of very straight facts without trying to make it any more sensational than it is. Uh, I'm trying to just keep it down the middle, and if I have something that might inform an opinion, I can, but not this one. I don't know.
Right, I understand. And what do you make of NASA getting involved? Like you said, you brought up NASA, and you mentioned how they have devoted $100,000 of their budget to studying UFOs, although they won't call them UFOs. If you look at their press release, they don't use the acronym UFO anywhere in the release. They only use UAP. So it appears they've adopted the military or government lingo for UFOs now as UAPs. But $100,000 is actually 0.004% of their total budget, which is around approximately $24 billion. What do you think that we are to make of the NASA study?
Um, what's going to come out of it at the end of I forgot how long it is, 8 months, 9 months. What's going to come out of it, I don't know. But just the fact that NASA is involved, I think at this point, I think it's further legitimizing people's reports, what people are seeing, and it further legitimizes the conversations that we're having in the media, that Congress just had, that stuff should be baked into bills that hit the Senate floor, and I just think this is just further legitimizing everything that we're talking about,
Right.
and that's been talked about for decades.
Oh, absolutely. This is Dr. Mounts with All Things Unexplained. I'm speaking with Chris Eberhart from the U.S. Sun. Chris, you were telling me about some exciting new stories that you've got breaking here soon.
Yeah, the next one will be. Sorry about that. I'm in an airport.
Oh, no worry.
Um, so the next thing we'll be doing, we have one. Hold on one second. Sorry about that.
No, that's
We'll be
okay.
talking. We'll be. I'll have a story likely over the weekend. A nice July 4th weekend story about some of these capabilities that we were just talking about. The ability, this transmedium ability, which is big. And in this bill that I referenced earlier, that just passed one of the Senate committees, it specifically now says undersea phenomena, and that's an interesting one. It's one of the first times I've seen it in a congressional bill. It's the first time I've really seen it referenced officially, and I think it gives more credibility to this to that 2019 incident off of California, where this object, whatever it is, a drone, an unmanned thing, whatever it was, it appeared in the videos to just vanish into the water, no splash, nothing, and it appeared to just defy physics. So that'll be the next story. I talked to Jeremy Corbell, who gives me his insight on that story. So hopefully that story, hopefully you like that one too.
Oh, absolutely. I know our listeners will want to check that out. And I'm so glad you mentioned the water medium. If you remember, I want to play a little clip real quick for you about our response at the UFO congressional hearing when asked about UAPs and underwater. And let's see, I think I've got a clip here. This was their response.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
Whoops. Yeah, we just...
Right.
It kind of piques your curiosity, right?
Right, and that's what's fascinating. But the fact that it's literally that's it, for word, undersea phenomena included in an official congressional bill. It gives credibility. Again, it's all about credibility. I think at this point where we should have been having this conversation decades ago, we're having it now, and I think we're just at the start, and we're going to get more over the next 10, 20 years.
Right. Have you got a place on Twitter people can check you out?
Yeah, it's Chris Eberhart 48. That's my Twitter page. Anybody's got tips, anything that they want to see, anything that should be looked at, DM me, tweet at me, follow me, and I'll hit you back.
Great. Well, this is Dr. Mouse. I've been joined by Christopher Eberhart with the U.S. Sun, talking to us a little bit about UFOs. Please check out his article, War of the Worlds. Air Force regularly fires at UFOs in war zones. Service member reveals after military's 11 near misses. Bombshell came out June 28th, and he's got some big news stuff coming out, I believe, this Friday, right, Chris?
It'd be either Saturday or Sunday, I believe.
Okay, coming out this weekend. We're all going to check that out. We appreciate you. Our listeners appreciate you and appreciate what you're doing and what you're doing to bring all this to the light. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast, man. Thank you.
Great. Safe travels, my friend, and we hope to have you on again very soon, all right?
All right. You're the man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All things unexplained.